Just because I wanted a slice of cake for my 60th birthday, everything went sour. Leonard put down his knife and fork, his face drawn into a frown, his tone sharp like he'd stepped on a thorn. Claire, honestly, how can you be so childish at your age? Mike and Ashley shot me matching looks of disapproval. Mom, Mike added, eyebrows tight, could you try not being so wasteful? That night, I was scrolling through Instagram when I stumbled across a photo Stephanie had posted. It was taken at a luxury restaurant in Manhattan where the prix menu starts at over $1,000 per person. Leonard, Mike, Ashley, and little Noah sat around a pristine table, smiling like the picture-perfect family. A family. Complete. Except for me. Well then they can go ahead and be a family. It had all started with a tiny request. That night at dinner I spoke gently, almost cautiously. My birthday's this weekend. I was hoping we could go to that Michelin dessert place in Brooklyn, just for a slice of their signature cake. Leonard froze. His knife clinked sharply against the plate, a crisp, jarring sound. He narrowed his eyes, his voice lined with scorn barely held back. Claire, how old are you again? Still daydreaming about birthday cake? That place charges over $100 for a piece of sugar. Do you think we're made of money? Instinctively, I wiped my hands on my apron, my fingers clenched so tight they turned pale. 30 years. 30 years, and all I wanted was one bite of something sweet on my 60th birthday. Stephanie went last week, I offered softly. She said it was incredible. I didn't even finish before Mike cut me off, his voice cold. Mom, Dad's right. Things are tight. We need to spend money wisely. Totally unnecessary. Ashley paused, fork in hand, casting me a look I couldn't quite read. Then Noah scrunched up his nose and shoved his plate away. I don't want to sit next to Grandma. He pinched his nose and shrieked. Grandma smells gross like a pig, and she wants cake. Ashley quickly covered his mouth, forcing a nervous laugh, but there was no hint of reproach in her eyes. Noah yanked her hand away and proudly declared, Stephanie, Grandma says life should be elegant. Grandma only knows how to buy used junk from flea markets. She doesn't know anything about elegance. The air froze solid. Leonard cleared his throat, looking mildly uncomfortable, but said nothing. No one did. My throat tightened. I couldn't say a word. I just stood up quietly and walked to the bedroom. The soft click of the door shutting felt like the last fragile piece of me shattering. Outside, Leonard's muffled voice pierced the silence. She's always been so competitive. It's pathetic. Look at her. She really thinks she can measure up to Stephanie. Something inside me twisted hard. And then, the doorbell rang, cutting through the tension like a siren. Leonard's voice suddenly lifted, filled with false cheer. Stephanie. You should have told us you were coming. The living room exploded with noise. Noah squealing with excitement, Mike and Ashley fawning over her with sugar-coated greetings. Behind the closed door, I listened to the laughter, the small talk, my fingers curling tighter and tighter into fists. Where's Claire? I don't see her. Stephanie's voice lilted, sweet with artificial concern. Ashley chuckled. She's probably sulking again. You know how she is, always taking things too seriously. Leonard's voice dropped, dismissive. Don't even start. She's throwing a fit over some dumb cake. 60 years old and still acting like a child. Then came Mike's voice, joining in without hesitation. Let her be, Aunt Stephanie. Let's just ignore her. Leonard jumped on that cue. Right. Let's not waste energy. Heard you won some big design award? We should go celebrate. Noah squealed again. Yay. Let's go eat a feast. No grandma allowed. Let her stay home and sulk. The front door shut with a heavy thud. The living room went quiet. And there I was. Alone. I stood beside the dinner table, staring at the half-eaten scraps left behind. My hands trembled as I slowly began to clean up. 30 years ago, the man who came home from work would stand in this doorway holding a cheap bouquet of grocery store daisies, grinning as he said, "You're amazing, Claire." Now I ask for cake on my birthday and become the punchline of the whole damn family. Once Leonard promised me, "When we're doing better, I'll help you open that bakery." I know it's your dream. No. Just a bitter joke. I wiped down the table, cleared the dishes, listening to the sharp, hollow sound of plates clinking. Even that felt like a kind of mockery. It was midnight and they still hadn't come home. Outside, a soft rain tapped against the windows, a steady drizzle blurring the edges of the night. I hesitated, then picked up my phone thinking I'd send a quick message, just to remind them to drive safe. But the moment I opened the screen I saw something new. Stephanie had just posted, then swiftly deleted, a photo on Instagram. In it, Leonard had his arm wrapped casually around her shoulders. Mike and his family were there too, all gathered around a lavish dinner table draped in a white cloth, plates gleaming with gourmet food, champagne flutes raised. The caption burned through me. Grateful for my dear old friends for helping me celebrate my award. This dinner was everything. Can't wait for our weekend photo shoot at the couture studio. The phone slipped from my fingers and hit the floor, screen shattering into thin spiderweb cracks, just like my heart in that instant. Each smiling face in that photo felt like a knife, driven deep and deliberate. They looked like a perfect, happy family. And I, the woman who gave 30 years to this family, had become an afterthought. A joke. My vision blurred as tears rushed in, unstoppable. All those years, working, sacrificing, swallowing my pride, had led only to rejection and disdain. Sometime past midnight the lock clicked. They were home. As soon as the door opened, Noah squealed. "Stephanie, grandma is amazing." Mike quickly hushed him. "Shoo, not so loud. You'll wake up your grandma. She'll start with that cake nonsense again." From the shadows of my room, I listened through the crack in the door, each word dragging me further down. To them Stephanie was flawless. And I? Just a bitter, nagging old woman who couldn't let go of a stupid cake. The next morning, Leonard walked in like nothing had happened and tossed a suit onto my lap. "Press this. I'm wearing it this weekend." He paused, lips curling into a smug smile, voice light and careless. "Stephanie booked a full family portrait shoot." I clutched the suit tightly, my throat constricting. I could barely breathe, but I still forced the words out. "What about me?" Silence. The only sound was the creak of his shoes on the floor. Leonard didn't look back. He didn't answer. He simply shut the bedroom door behind him with a soft, final click. That silence cut deeper than any insult. But I wasn't ready to give up. That afternoon I slipped into the bathroom, quietly locking the door. In front of the mirror I carefully applied eyeliner, dabbed on lipstick. My hand trembled with each stroke. 30 years of marriage, and this was the first time I had ever dressed up just for myself. Maybe it was foolish. Maybe it was only to prove that I wasn't the unkempt old woman they made me out to be. But the moment I stepped out, Mike nearly choked on his coffee. "Mom, what's on your face? You look like one of those ladies from the senior choir." "It's terrifying." Ashley stifled a laugh behind her hand, her eyes flicking toward Mike in warning, though her voice dripped with passive aggression. "Claire, at our age less is more. Makeup only makes you look 10 years older." Noah darted behind Ashley, clutching at her sweater, eyes wide with alarm. "Grandma looks scary. Like a witch from a movie." Leonard said nothing. He just stared at me, cold and detached, like I was a bad performance he was too bored to critique. My eyes stung, but I didn't let a single tear fall. I turned back into the bathroom, quietly wiped away the makeup with shaking hands, rubbing until my skin turned raw. Later that afternoon, Leonard changed into his crisp, freshly pressed shirt. He held 2 concert tickets in one hand and tossed a sticky note onto the table with the other. "I'm taking Stephanie to the symphony tonight. One of her pieces got selected." He said it like it was nothing. Then just before walking out the door he added without turning around, "Get the chores done. I don't want to come back to a mess." I nodded mechanically. I bent down and picked up the sticky note. The list was long. Clean the kitchen. Vacuum the living room. Wash the car. Trim the hedges. While tidying the study I stumbled upon a receipt in one of the drawers. A diamond bracelet, $15,000. More than enough for a cake. Enough to buy an entire bakery, in fact. A flicker of absurd hope stirred inside me. Maybe he felt guilty? Maybe this was a birthday gift? Maybe, just maybe, he remembered? Clinging to that last shred of fragile, pathetic hope, I asked him carefully, softly. "My birthday is next week. Did you have anything planned?" Leonard was adjusting his tie. At my words, his brow twitched in annoyance. He waved me off, voice laced with disgust. "Seriously? At your age, what's the point of a damn birthday? Can you stop?" My heart plummeted. The bracelet had never been for me. I clenched my jaw, pulled out my phone and took a picture of the receipt. Then saved it. Backed it up. just in case. Saturday came quicker than I expected. At breakfast, Leonard was already seated at the table, wearing a mask of rare, performative gentleness. I gave it some thought. "You can come to the photo shoot," he said, his gaze sweeping over me like I was a worn-out coat someone had to bring along out of obligation. "Wear that loose black dress. Covers up all your flab. Don't embarrass us." I looked up, meeting his eyes that tried to fake sympathy but only reflected contempt. There was no doubt in my mind. This was Stephanie's doing. She always loved playing the gracious saint, the one who included others to make herself look even more noble. "I don't want to go," I said, calm and steady. Leonard blinked, caught off guard. His voice jumped an octave. "What?" He slammed his palm on the table so hard the silverware clattered against the plates. "Claire, are you out of your mind?" He jabbed a finger at me, his voice cracking with rage. "You were begging to go. Now I tell you to come and you pull this diva crap? What game are you playing?" His roar shook the dining room. He wasn't just angry, I had made him lose face in front of Stephanie. Worse, he'd agreed to her request but couldn't deliver the obedient, picture-perfect ex-wife she had in mind. I answered him evenly, my voice firm. "I'm not playing games. I have other plans this weekend." Leonard's face turned crimson in an instant. "Claire Dawson, I'm telling you, you're going whether you like it or not." He stormed out, slamming the door so violently it rattled the chandelier upstairs. The morning of the photo shoot, I woke at 4. The sky was still dark when I stepped into the kitchen and began cooking. I laid out a full breakfast spread on the table. Homemade apple pie, steamed sea bass, cream-filled sponge rolls, freshly ground coffee, and even Leonard's favorite honey-glazed pumpkin pastries. One by one they came down the stairs and stopped in their tracks at the sight of the table. The room smelled warm, rich, full of flavor. But their expressions? Pure disgust. Ashley wrinkled her nose. "Heavy sugar and grease before a photo shoot? Are you kidding me?" Noah clamped his nose shut with one hand and shouted dramatically, "Grandma smells gross. I'm gonna puke." Just then the doorbell rang. Stephanie swept in on her heels, carrying neat bags of salad and fresh-pressed juice. "Come on, everyone. I brought us a healthy breakfast," she chirped, her voice syrupy and sharp at the same time. Leonard's face lit up. Without hesitation he shoved my breakfast to the side. "Now this is what I call healthy. Stephanie really knows how to live." And just like that my heart went cold. I sat quietly in a corner of the dining room with a cup of coffee, eating the breakfast I had made, every swallow tinged with bitterness. When it was time to leave, Stephanie had already slipped into the front passenger seat. "Sorry, Claire," she said with mock regret and a sugary smile. "You know I get carsick. I have to sit up front." The back seat had only 4 spots. Mike, Ashley, Noah, and Leonard had already taken them. There was no seat left for me. For a moment the air turned awkward. Leonard shot me a look, clearly annoyed. "The studio's not far. Just walk." Mike quickly jumped in, eager to back him up like a scared child picking the right side. "Yeah, Mom, some fresh air will do you good. We'll see you there." And with that he shut the car door. The engine roared to life. The exhaust hit me full in the face as they pulled out of the driveway. I coughed, eyes stinging from more than just fumes. His house. Maybe it stopped being mine a long time ago. The studio was an hour's walk away. I called a cab and arrived before they did. Just as I reached the studio entrance, their car pulled up. Leonard looked genuinely startled to see me there. Stephanie, on the other hand, wore that smug little half-smile she reserved for moments like this. She walked over and glanced pointedly at the receipt still in my hand. "Well, Claire, cab ride. That must have cost a pretty penny." If it had been the old me, I would have forced a laugh and brushed it off. But not today. I looked at her squarely and said, "At least I paid for it with my own money." Stephanie's face froze. For a moment the air went still. She clenched her jaw, the smile twitching at the corners of her lips. Then, out of nowhere, I felt a hard shove against my back. I stumbled forward, slamming into the corner of a studio table. A searing pain tore through my lower back. I nearly collapsed. I spun around to see Leonard storming toward me, face twisted with fury. "Claire Dawson, what the hell do you mean by that comment to Stephanie?" Stephanie didn't even have time to react before Leonard raised his hand, furious. "Leonard." Stephanie said his name softly. He paused, slowly lowering his arm. Don't cause a scene, she murmured, gentle and composed. I met his eyes one last time, then looked away. Everyone in the room was staring. Their faces were masks of judgment, mockery, annoyance. I didn't say another word. After all, they were still my family. At least that's what I used to believe. Not long after, the photographer called everyone in. They all wore matching beige shirts and dark slacks, polished, coordinated, their smiles rehearsed to perfection. Just as the shutter was about to click, Noah suddenly doubled over, clutching his stomach. "Ow. It hurts. My tummy hurts," he shrieked, bolting toward the restroom, his voice sharp enough to slice the air. Leonard's face darkened in an instant. He looked like a lit fuse ready to explode. His eyes cut toward me like blades. "What did you feed him this morning?" His voice was low, tight, and teetering on the edge of fury. "Did you do this on purpose? Are you trying to sabotage the shoot?" Before I could even speak, he stormed over and grabbed my wrist. "Leonard, calm down." His fingers dug into my skin like iron clamps. People moved around the studio, but to me, everything blurred into silence. The only sound I could hear was the pounding of my heart. "He didn't eat my breakfast," I said quickly, trying to wriggle free. "He only had the food Stephanie brought. You saw him eat it." But Leonard wasn't listening. His rage had swallowed reason. He shoved me hard toward a table stacked with photography gear. My elbow slammed into a metal tripod and a sharp, searing pain shot up my arm. I could barely gasp. He towered over me, yelling, "Now you're blaming others for your mistake? Are you insane, Claire?" Stephanie took a dainty step back, pressing a hand to her chest like some fragile heroine. "Claire, I know you're upset with Leonard, but how could you accuse me like that? I brought unsweetened yogurt, for goodness sake." Jason marched forward, face twisted in disgust. "Mom, what's wrong with you? Seriously, this is too much." None of them wanted to hear the truth. To them, the culprit was obvious. Me. It always was. Noah came stumbling out of the bathroom, crying and wailing, his little body writhing on the studio floor. "It hurts. Grandma did this. Bad grandma." He lunged at me, fists flying, feet kicking. I didn't dodge. I just stood there and let it happen. This was the boy I had rocked to sleep 100 times. The boy I had once cradled against my chest through fevers and nightmares. Now all his pain, all his rage, he poured it onto me. Ashley exploded. "What the hell did you give him? If something happens to him, I swear I won't let it go." I gritted my teeth, my voice hoarse. "Take him to the hospital. Let a doctor figure out what actually happened." In the exam room, the doctor flipped through Noah's results, his tone casual. "He had chilled yogurt this morning. Likely caused a brief stomach spasm, nothing serious. He prescribed some probiotics and pain relievers." The room fell into an uneasy silence. "Has the yogurt?" It had been Stephanie's. No one spoke. Leonard let out a low grunt but said nothing remotely close to an apology. Instead, he huffed and muttered, "Still your fault. Why didn't you tell him not to eat it?" And just like that, the others jumped in, as if his words had unlocked their pent-up frustrations. Ashley. All pointing fingers, blaming me for not supervising Noah, for letting him eat whatever he wanted. They kept piling it on louder and harsher. As if they'd been waiting for a moment like this. A reason to unleash it all. I stood there, numb, letting their words wash over me like cold rain. 30 years. I had stripped myself bare for this family. Given them everything I had. Every layer of myself. And now the way they looked at me. Like I was nothing but a burden. Leonard gave me a look filled with open disdain. "You show up with bad vibes and ruin everything. Typical." He waved me off, his voice dismissive. "Stay away from my grandson." Stephanie stepped up beside him and patted his shoulder, her eyes glittering with something that looked an awful lot like triumph. "Let it go, Leonard," she cooed. "No use getting worked up. The kid matters most. We'll just reschedule the shoot for tomorrow." Leonard's face lit up with fake warmth. "You're always so thoughtful. Claire could learn a thing or two from you." I couldn't listen anymore. I slipped away from the group, pushing through the hallway until I found the restroom. I locked the door, turned on the faucet, and let the water run over my hands as my tears finally spilled. 30 years of loyalty, of care, of effort. And all I had to show for it was pain, humiliation, and blame. From behind, I heard footsteps. A soft knock. When I opened the door, a woman in a white coat stood there. She looked at me for a moment, then reached into her coat pocket and handed me a card. "My friend's a lawyer," she said gently. "If you ever need help, she's good. Really good." I took the card with trembling fingers, my voice barely a whisper. "Thank you." By the time I stepped outside the hospital, night had fallen. The air was bitter and sharp. Leonard was gone. He had taken Jason and the rest home in the car. No one had waited for me. No one had called. I stood on the curb watching their tail lights vanish into the dark. And in that moment I knew. They'd finally done it. They'd erased me from this family. Completely. By the time I got home it was nearly midnight. The house was quiet. No lights on, no voices. Just the sound of running water from the bathroom and the faint, persistent buzz of a phone vibrating on the coffee table. I walked over. Leonard's phone screen was glowing with a group chat notification. "Stephanie, given what happened this morning, to avoid any more surprises, we're rescheduling the shoot for next Tuesday. And this time, let's not include Claire. Thoughts?" The replies popped up in quick succession. "Leonard, great idea." "Jason, I'm in." "Ashley, Stephanie, you always think of everything." "Stephanie, just looking out for everyone. Claire's been too emotionally unstable lately." "Jason, don't worry about my mom, Stephanie. She's always been like this." "Leonard, probably menopause. Housewives are exhausting." This was the secret little group they'd made behind my back. And just like that, my name was erased, cleanly, effortlessly, from the list of family. They didn't even bother with pretenses anymore. I set the phone down. My chest felt numb, like my heart had dropped into an icy well, too cold to even hurt properly. I walked slowly to the corner of the study and opened an old, dust-covered filing cabinet. From the bottom drawer I pulled out a folder I hadn't touched in years. Inside was the deed to the house. My name, Claire Dawson, stood alone on the document as the sole legal owner. This house had belonged to my parents. Before we got married, my father had insisted the title be in my name only. "A woman needs her own home," he had said. "Otherwise, one day she'll be kicked out with nowhere to go." I sat at the desk, fingers gently brushing the faded paper. And right there in that quiet something shifted. The next morning, after they left to take Noah to school, I gathered my documents and headed to the law office recommended by the doctor I'd met at the hospital. The woman who greeted me introduced herself as Lauren Mitchell. She was in her 50s, sharp-featured with silvering hair pinned into a sleek bun. Her voice was firm, her presence unshakable. After hearing my story, she looked me square in the eye. "Sustained emotional neglect, verbal degradation, social isolation. Claire, this qualifies as emotional abuse. It's a form of domestic violence." He paused, then added, "But we'll need more evidence, especially if there's hidden assets or signs of infidelity." I nodded. That night I got to work. I knew Leonard's safe code. It was Noah's birthday. He'd always assumed I'd never pay attention to such details. When the door clicked open, I froze. Inside were not only the original property documents, but also stacks of photographs. Leonard and Stephanie smiling, kissing, embracing. Some dated back to before we were even married. The most recent, last weekend. A luxury hotel I'd never even heard of. Then there were jewelry receipts. Bank statements. Regular wire transfers from Leonard to Stephanie, so large my hands began to shake. One by one I made copies. Sealed each in a file. Put everything back exactly where it had been. When it was done, I felt something unexpected. Calm. The next day I returned to Lauren's office. She looked at the evidence, then at me, her voice steady and resolute. "We can begin divorce proceedings. Right now if you're ready." I nodded slowly. "I'm done living like this." Lauren poured me a cup of tea. For a moment she simply looked at me, and in her eyes, I saw something I hadn't seen in a very long time. Respect. Till my birthday arrived. Leonard left the house early that morning. Not long after he called. His voice was cool, almost mechanical. "Make sure the house is clean. Especially the guest room. Stephanie's staying over tonight. Oh, and pick up a bottle of face wash for her, she's out." I gripped the phone tighter, struggling to breathe. "Leonard, today's my birthday." There was a 2-second pause. Then he exhaled impatiently as if I had inconvenienced him. Yeah, I know. Don't make a big deal out of it. We're going out to dinner tonight. If you want to join, find your own way there." Before I could say anything else, the line went dead. I stood there, the phone still pressed to my ear as silent tears streamed down my face. That evening, I took a cab to the French restaurant they had reserved. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows I saw them. Leonard, Stephanie, Jason, Ashley and little Noah, all gathered around a window table, laughing like a scene out of a commercial. Leonard sat beside Stephanie, his face lit up with a smile I hadn't seen in years. Noah leaned against her lap, giggling like a kitten, completely at ease. I stood there for a long moment before finally walking in. No one noticed me at first. It wasn't until I approached the table that Leonard glanced up, his tone flat, like he was ordering an extra plate. "Oh, you're here. Sit over there." He jerked his chin toward the farthest corner, near the kitchen next to where the servers bustled in and out. I sat down quietly, steadying myself to endure yet another evening. Then Stephanie, all smiles, pulled a lavishly wrapped box from her handbag and slid it across the table toward me. "Happy birthday, Claire. I picked this out just for you." I glanced around the table. Their faces were bright with anticipation, not the kind that comes from love or kindness, but the cruel glee of watching a spectacle unfold. I opened the box. Inside lay a cheap plastic bottle of slimming cream, the kind you find in clearance bins at discount stores. It reeked of humiliation, not generosity. Stephanie's voice chimed in, saccharine sweet, slicing sharper than any knife. "It's really effective. One of my friends lost 20 pounds in just 2 months." She paused, smiling wide enough for everyone to catch the edge of her words. "Claire, if you don't start taking better care of yourself, you really won't be a good fit for such an exceptional family, you know?" A few forced chuckles rippled around the table as if it were just harmless teasing. But I knew better. Every single one of them, Leonard, Jason, Ashley, even Noah, saw nothing wrong with it. It was entertainment for them. A little seasoning for dinner. Something to liven up the evening. I said nothing. After dinner, Stephanie casually suggested she ride back with us. Leonard, of course, was more than eager to oblige, even rushing to hold the car door open for her. This time I didn't wait around. I quietly ordered a car of my own and left alone. Back home, I lay on my bed, staring up at the flickering chandelier overhead, its jittery light syncing with the heavy thud of my heartbeat. Soon, laughter and voices drifted from the guest room. The walls were thin. I heard every word. "You see, if we mortgage that house, we could triple it easily with just one fund investment," Stephanie said, her voice bubbling with excitement. "After we cash out, we could take a world tour. Go anywhere we want," she added, her tone full of dreams spun from someone else's sacrifices. Leonard chuckled low, the kind of thrill I hadn't heard in years. "Her house. Prime location. Good structure. It's one of those old properties her parents left her. It's doubled in value at least." Stephanie laughed even louder. "What if she says no?" Leonard let out a sneering laugh, colder than the midnight wind. She spent her whole life being spineless. She wouldn't dare. She's timid. Obedient. Always has been." I gripped the bedsheet so hard it tore slightly under my fingers. Tears soaked the pillow beneath me, silent and relentless. This house. This man. They had never respected me. Not even a little. 3 days later, it was Stephanie's birthday. Leonard rushed out early in the morning, excited as a boy on Christmas, to pick up a custom cake from that Michelin-starred bakery. A 2-tiered masterpiece, champagne strawberry flavored, ostentatious and exquisite. I stood at the doorway, watching him carefully lift the cake box out of the trunk like it was some priceless treasure. I couldn't hold back. "Is an expensive cake really worth it?" Leonard didn't even glance at me. Without missing a beat, he tossed out, "If Stephanie likes it, then it's worth it." He paused, finally looking at me with an impatient flick of his eyes. "Stop comparing yourself to Stephanie." I turned away, swallowing the bitterness rising in my throat. That bakery. It was the same one I had once dreamed of visiting for my 60th birthday. The dream they'd laughed at. That afternoon, while tidying the study, I overheard Jason and Ashley talking in hushed voices. "I found a few nice senior homes," Ashley was saying, her voice soft but cutting. "Full care facilities. It's safer for your mom at her age. Living alone isn't ideal." Jason nodded, his tone casual, as if they were discussing rearranging furniture. "I think it's a good idea. Plus, Aunt Stephanie's been wanting to move in. Dad mentioned it too. The master bedroom would be perfect for her." Ashley hesitated, then whispered, Did Leonard really say that? Jason sighed. He said we should start prepping Mom. She'll resist at first, but we need to get this moving. I stood frozen behind the study door, my whole body pinned to the spot. The wall at my back felt ice cold, and slowly so did my spine. Now I saw it clearly. Their so-called prepping was nothing more than clearing me out of the house to make room for Stephanie. That evening I went to see Lauren at the law office. She reviewed the new documents I had gathered, her expression steady and encouraging. This is getting stronger. She looked at me with a calm but unyielding gaze. It's not time to strike yet. Be patient. You're doing incredibly well. Stay strong. I inhaled deeply and nodded. I won't back down. That night, instead of going home for dinner, I told them I was taking a walk. Instead, I went to a new gym that had just opened in the community center. At the front desk, a young trainer, no more than 22, smiled warmly. First time? What are you looking to work on? I stood in front of the mirror, studying my tear-swollen eyes, the tired lines and the stubborn resilience still clinging to my frame. I want to get stronger, I said. Inside and out. Stronger than I've ever been. A week later, while cleaning out my closet, I stumbled across a small navy velvet box hidden deep in the lining. The moment I opened it, my fingers started to tremble violently. Inside were 2 matching rings. Engraved on the inside. Leonard and Stephanie. I could barely hold the ring, my entire body shaking. That night, I planted a recording device at the landing of the staircase and waited silently. Around midnight, Leonard crept downstairs. In the hush of the house, I heard him speaking into his phone, his voice a low, tender murmur I barely recognized. The rings are hidden. Once she gets the hint and moves out, we can be together properly. He chuckled softly. Once we sell that house, we'll have enough to travel the world, several times over. On the other end of the line, Stephanie laughed, a sound thick with satisfaction. She begged me today to help Photoshop the family pictures, wanted to look slimmer. Leonard snorted. She can Photoshop herself into a twig for all I care. That picture still screams pathetic. There was a pause, then he added with a cruel intimacy. Soon we'll take a real family photo. Without her. I stood there, cloaked in darkness, gripping the recorder so tightly my knuckles turned white. There were no more tears left to cry. My heart had shattered into so many pieces, it had gone quiet. Right there in that shadowed stairwell, I let go of the last fragile thread of hope I had been clinging to. The next day, when the whole family went off to retake their precious family photos, I faked an illness and stayed behind. After they left, I sat by the window and watched the morning sun climb higher in the sky. For the first time in years, I felt completely, utterly calm. I hadn't expected Leonard and Jason to come rushing back before 2 o'clock. Mom, Jason said, beaming, his voice almost unnaturally cheerful, we need you to come to the notary's office this afternoon. Just a quick signature. Leonard stood behind him, arms crossed, tone casual, but his eyes wouldn't meet mine. It's about the house. Stephanie found this amazing investment opportunity. High returns. We want to mortgage the house to pull out a loan. Guaranteed profit. I looked at them both, smiled faintly and shook my head. I'm not signing anything. Leonard's face darkened instantly. His eyes flashed with rage. Claire Dawson, what the hell is wrong with you? We fed you, housed you for 30 years, and now when the family needs you, you stab us in the back. You're so selfish. I inhaled deeply, holding his furious gaze without flinching. I'm selfish. My voice was soft, but it hit the air like a hammer. For 30 years I cooked your meals, washed your clothes, raised your child. I gave up my career, my dreams, my entire life for this family. And now I'm selfish. Leonard's fists balled up so tight the veins on the backs of his hands bulged. Claire, if you're going to be this ungrateful, then get out of this house right now. Jason jumped in, full of righteous anger. Mom, how could you? Stephanie's always been kind to you. How can you be so ungrateful? I looked at my son, the boy I once rocked to sleep, the boy whose scraped knees I kissed better. And for the first time I saw him for what he had become. Maybe he hadn't changed. Maybe I had simply refused to see it until now. I reached into my bag and pulled out a beige folder, laying it flat on the table. No need to get so worked up. I've been prepared for this. I unfolded the documents inside. Bank statements. Jewelry receipts. Photos of the matching rings. Screenshots of Leonard's midnight phone calls with Stephanie. This house has already been legally transferred to a trust managed by my lawyer. You can't touch it, not 1 cent. I paused, letting that sink in, then said even more softly, yet with unshakable force. And this morning I officially filed for divorce. I tapped the folder lightly. These documents. I imagine the court will find them very compelling. Leonard's face went from red to ghostly white. His lips trembled, but no words came out. You're insane, he finally roared. No, Leonard. I stood up, my voice calm and steady as steel. I'm finally sane. Jason's face twisted in shock and fury. How could you do this to Dad? To me? If you go through with this, I'll never call you Mom again. I listened quietly, letting him finish his tantrum. Then without blinking I answered, Jason, you are my son. I love you. But I don't owe you. I closed the folder slowly. If you're looking for a mother figure, you already have Stephanie. You made that choice. I added in the same even tone. You and Ashley were planning to move me into a nursing home, to make space for Stephanie in the master bedroom. That home you keep talking about. It was never mine to begin with. Jason was silent on the other end of the accusation. Mom, I didn't mean it like that. You don't need to explain, I said gently. I wish you well, Jason. But from now on our paths are separate. After they left, I gathered every piece of evidence and sent it off. To Stephanie's Art Foundation, to her sponsors, to her professional contacts. The evidence of her misdeeds, embezzling funds, accepting improper gifts, abusing her position, was more than enough to end her career for good. 2 months later, I took out a loan against the house. With that startup money, I opened a small warm dessert shop in the busiest part of downtown. Above the door, a gold sign gleamed in the sunlight. 60 and free. 60 years old and finally free. The shop specialized in handcrafted cakes and limited edition desserts. Each one a piece of the dream I had once tucked away, believing it would never come true. That young trainer who once encouraged me to lift weights? She was now my store manager. Radiant, professional, and effortlessly kind with every customer who walked through the door. It didn't take long for the shop to earn a reputation in the community. Every morning, as the sunlight streamed through the wide glass windows, I would stand behind the counter, inhale the buttery scent of fresh pastries, and feel something I had almost forgotten. Belonging. Claire, your tiramisu is absolutely insane. Marissa, one of my most loyal regulars, was once again singing my praises, cradling her plate with visible devotion. Please teach me how to make it again. I laughed and nodded, scooping another generous portion onto her plate. A warm, familiar satisfaction bloomed in my chest. This was the life I had built for myself. One bright afternoon, about 6 months after opening, I was setting up for a baking class when I glanced toward the door. Standing outside the shop looking utterly wrecked were Stephanie and Leonard. Their suits were rumpled, their faces hollow and tired. Stephanie had been fired from the Arts Foundation for embezzlement. Leonard had lost his teaching license after an ethics investigation. Behind them stood Jason, looking small, defeated. His eyes carrying the weight of hard lessons the world had finally forced him to learn. Mom. Jason's voice was low, almost pleading. Can we talk? I wiped the cream from my hands, smiling gently but firmly. Pie customers are here, I said lightly. You're welcome to look around if you like. And with that I turned away. A group of college girls burst through the door, chattering and laughing. They were my students here for their weekly baking class. Claire. We're here, they called, waving with the carefree joy of young birds. Sunlight streamed through the windows, casting a soft golden glow around me. I opened my arms and pulled them into a warm embrace. In that moment, standing in a ring of laughter and sunlight, I felt it deep in my bones. I had become the woman I was always meant to be. Today, I told them with a wink, we're making courage custard. I patted one of the girls on the shoulder. My signature tart. They let out a chorus of excited cheers and rushed toward the kitchen. From the corner near the window, I caught the eye of a woman raising her coffee cup toward me. Lauren, my lawyer, my dear friend. Crashing the dessert class again? I teased as I walked over. She patted the seat beside her and leaned in with a sly grin. Your ex-husband stood out there for a good long while. Pitiful sight, really. If you ask me, karma couldn't have been sweeter. I smiled, glancing out the window. Leonard, Stephanie, and Jason were already walking away. Their steps uneven, their heads bowed low. They don't matter anymore, I said softly. Just then the oven dinged from the kitchen, its bright chime cutting through the air. I turned back toward the workbench, ready for the next batch of fresh pastries. Claire, you look amazing today, the young manager said, carrying out a tray of custard tarts. Did something good happen? I nodded, reaching into my apron pocket and pulling out my phone. I showed her a picture. A brand new family portrait. No Leonard. No Jason. No Stephanie. Just me, standing proudly in a soft blue apron, a gentle smile on my face. Surrounded by my staff, by the girls who baked and laughed and dreamed with me. This, I said, my voice warm. This is family. The people who love you. The ones who cheer for you simply because you exist. Later that evening, I closed the shop's glass door behind me. The street outside was washed in the deep, burning orange of sunset. My shadow stretched long across the sidewalk, but it no longer hunched. It stood tall. My phone rang again. It was Jason. The third call today. I hesitated for a moment, then answered. Mom, we really need you. His voice cracked, trembling with emotion. Dad and Stephanie, they broke up. He wants to come home. I didn't slow my pace. I kept walking, eyes fixed on the glowing skyline ahead, and answered softly. Jason, I'm sorry to hear that. But the mom you could trample on, the one who swallowed every insult without a word. She's gone. I paused, letting the weight of that truth settle between us. Good luck. And I hung up. I tucked the phone away and turned, walking toward the Michelin-starred restaurant just down the street. The one I had always dreamed of visiting, but had never once booked a table at, not in 30 years. Good evening. I have a reservation, I told the host with a smile. A table for one. By the window, please. The host pulled out the chair for me and I sat down slowly, savoring the moment. When the menu came, I didn't hesitate. I ordered the most decadent dessert tasting they offered. This is my birthday present to myself, I whispered inside my heart. A gift that was 30 years overdue. Outside the window, the city shimmered like an endless celebration, lights twinkling against the night sky. I lifted my glass and caught my reflection in the window. A woman of 60, smiling gently at herself. The woman I saw now was no longer a shadow shrinking under someone else's approval. She was her own story. Her own flame. To freedom. To courage, I whispered, raising my glass. To the woman who finally learned to love herself. The evening breeze brushed past the window, soft and tender, as if it were sweeping away years of silent tears and unspoken grief. From today on, my life would be mine alone to write. No more waiting for permission. No more shrinking to fit spaces too small for who I had become. Just me. And the woman I chose to be. The waiter brought the dessert. I closed my eyes, clasped my hands lightly over my heart and made a wish. Not just for myself, but for every woman who had ever been ignored, misunderstood, made invisible. May you wake up soon. May you realize you were never the problem. And may you finally see that the light you've been waiting for has been inside you all along. I took a small bite of the cake. The sweetness bloomed across my tongue. Tasted like freedom. Tasted like peace.